That is fantastic. All right, we are live. We are live here. We're at 6 o'clock. We always wait just a few minutes to get everybody settled, get some folks coming in. We've got just wrapping up our annual meeting, so we've got some folks that are leaving that one and joining this other link here. So we've had some great fun. Had some great fun. I see Bruce is with us. Hi, Bruce. Let's
Unmute.
see.
Being
That is
50
that's probably the most repeated thing said this calendar year is your microphone is muted.
Microphone, unmute.
Yeah.
I've seen it on t-shirts now. Like at the has like the little microphone icon. It says you're on mute. That is the buzz. I think we're gonna see all of that in the end of year top 10 lists that tend to come out on like New Year's Eve. We'll see that a lot.
I think we're going to have to. All right. Mary Jo, are you going to take care of intros today?
Oh, I thought you were doing that. You want me to do that?
Yeah, I want you. You got this. Or unless JR wants to. I know he's
Oh, JR, what? You haven't done one yet, have you?
So we have all Zoomed at least once a day, every day now. I think this is going to be about, I don't know. Some of us I think are probably on day 14 or 20 consecutively now, which probably isn't that much considering all the kids that are doing virtual learning, but certainly it's been interesting. So I'm going to hand it off. You guys can rock, paper, scissors it from here. All I can say is Dexter and Bruce, so thank you so much for joining us. We're going to take a look at what is this thing going to look like now, post pandemic or live pandemic. Where are we going to focus our attentions? How do we move forward? How do community theaters re-engage their volunteers? How do they re-engage their audience members? How do we make people feel comfortable, feel safe? And I think in Michigan, not to direct anything, but we've got such a unique experience because we have all the 4 seasons. So
in 1 week.
In 1 week, yeah. We were snowing earlier today, and now we've got rain, and we've got 40-mile-an-hour wind gusts. So, without further ado, let's jump right into it, guys.
All right, great. All right, thanks, Jamie. I also want to reiterate, Dexter, for those of you who don't know, Dexter's with Midland Center for the Arts. I believe, are you director of theater programs there, Dexter?
Yep, correct.
Okay, perfect. And then Bruce Dinker is no stranger to me. This is my boss. Bruce is the executive and artistic director here at Grand Rapids Civic Theatre. So for housekeeping, let's just kind of keep it the same way we always have. If you have questions for Dexter and Bruce, please use the Q&A down at the bottom, and I will keep watch and get those questions to them. And then basically, let's start out, guys. Let's start out by first asking, what are the plans for each of your theaters to reopen? And at what capacity does that mean for you guys? Who wants to go first? Dexter, let's go first.
Okay. Well, first of all, thanks for inviting us on here, and hi everybody. Hope you guys have been having a really great and productive conference. So yeah, this has been a really strange year, and I think figuring out the path, now that we're on 6 months into this, I think figuring out the path to reopening, I think we're starting to see the first kind of just the first little twitches of getting ourselves back into the swing of things. At the center, we pretty quickly, as we were starting to gear up for our 2021 season, and we realized pretty quickly that we had no idea what was going to be happening the next month, let alone 9 months out or a year out. So we pretty quickly abandoned the idea of a season the way that we typically think of as a 12-month season that we're planning 18 months in advance. So at this point, we're programming quarterly. Right now we are programmed out through the end of the year. We feel like we can predict to a certain extent what things might look like for the end of the year. And even then, that then turns out to be a surprise, from week to week, as the Supreme Court weighs in and, with changing executive orders and whatnot. So we're just going on we're programming on a 3-month cycle. We have our first show that is just started rehearsals last week. We're doing a production of Almost Maine. We were planning on doing it entirely live streamed. We've cast 2 quarantined couples who live together, so that to kind of minimize the exposure as much as we can. And they've been in rehearsals now for about a week and a half, and that's going to be running the first couple of weeks of December. But then with the shift in capacities, now that they're allowing indoor patrons, audiences of up to 20% of the capacity of the theaters, we have hundreds of subscribers who didn't get to finish out their subscription season last year, and so we're going to be inviting them back in to be our in-house audience as much as they feel comfortable. But a lot of it is also just testing the waters. Like this first show out the door is about figuring out, no matter, just because we want to do a show doesn't mean that the audiences feel comfortable coming back yet. So it's about figuring out where everyone is in terms of their comfort level and starting the process of building consumer confidence, right? Finding out where they are and then making sure that they understand that we care about their health and their safety, and making sure that they feel comfortable coming back.
Okay, Bruce?
Yes, thank you. Very similar. We're planning on in very brief stints, a very different season than we initially were embarking on. And our plans are any production we're doing, we're making sure we select small productions. We've started with radio plays to minimize the amount of interaction required. And then we'll go into some small cast plays and musicals, 2 or 3 people for the most part, again, to minimize the number of people that are necessary. Because we can handle the audience. Our theater is big enough that, with 150 people, which is what our 20% turns out to be, we're pretty confident we can handle them in the lobby space. Our biggest concern is backstage. It's the volunteer conditions, backstage, green room, dressing room, and on the stage itself is where the real danger is for us in terms of, how to apply the correct distancing and safety for the cast and crew and the rest of our volunteers. So we're trying to be minimal in terms of the plays we're selecting, but we also make sure that they're plays that can both be streamed and or performed live. So that's, certainly makes it, reduces the plays that you can do because not everything is available, across all the platforms. But it's been an interesting learning process to figure out how to select material and what it means. We're also investigating double casting certain events. And I know that's the endeavor right now. We're casting a radio version of Christmas Carol, and the director, Allison Ferris, that's how she's pursuing the auditions, is to be able to double cast the show to help protect everyone in case of some illness. But I think the other challenge is, just what's happening the last 7 to 10 days. We're experiencing another spike here in Michigan, as is happening actually around the country. There's definitely a growth in the virus and the infection rate and the hospitalization rate that is really beginning to concern the health professionals that we talk to. So that's the other reason to do things that can be streamed. So if we cannot welcome an audience into the auditorium, we might still be able to do some level of performance. Next weekend, we're doing a drive-in theater experience. I think we'll have to bring our portable fireplaces to make that work but for the actors, but the audience will be in their cars, right? So I think we're just trying to be creative and try to think about things a little differently, that we typically do.
In that, Dexter, the question comes to you. Are you inviting then last year's season ticket patrons to come see the play? And are they able to attend on last year's season ticket, or do they have to buy new tickets? And then with that same thing, Bruce, you know, maybe you should explain how Civic has done all of those season subscriptions that we weren't able to use as well. So go ahead, Dexter, on that.
Yeah, so we had a production of Gentleman's Guide to Love and Murder that was supposed to go up in May that never made it past its. We had a single rehearsal for it before it was canceled, and so all of those patrons were all given refunds for you know, and so they were given the choice whether they wanted a refund or whether they wanted to donate the cost of their ticket to the center, or whether they wanted to hold it as credit. But you know, it's been sick. You know, our subscriber base is the most loyal and our most connected patrons. They're the heart and soul of what we do, right? They make up so much of our donor base, and they're the ones that are in our seats all the time. And so we want to make sure that, you know, we haven't had a show, we haven't had a reason for them to come and visit us and to talk to them in the last 6 months. We want to make sure that they know that they're on our minds and that we're thinking about them and that they're a priority for us. So we were trying to think of like, what can we do to make sure that they know how can we make them feel special, bring them back into the theater, and give them something that honors the cancellation and the credit that they were given for last year, to make sure that they continue as our subscribers, because time goes by, there's you're at risk of weakening those bonds. People aren't in the habit of coming to see your shows and coming to your theater, and we're spending a lot of time on the telephone, just calling our most loyal patrons and making sure they know that we still care about them, and we're trying to find the ways to make sure that we appreciate their support.
We had to start vouchering current subscribers in March when the production was cut with 2 weeks left to go on its run. And then we had 2 other shows that had to be canceled. Well, 4 other shows that had to be canceled in the meantime. We vouchered those patrons with tickets. We also offered, we kind of strongly encouraged the rain check, but we also did offer refunds in a case where, we had a patron that required it. And then as we had just begun our season ticket sale for the season or the year that we're currently in. So we had a number of season tickets that had already been pre-sold. And what we told those patrons is that, once we can return to the theater and produce as whatever we know we do, then we'll begin honoring, those season tickets at that time. And I have to say our patrons were phenomenally agreeable through this process. I mean, they really helped the theater a great deal by accepting the vouchers. And in fact, the majority of them donated the value of their tickets to the theater. So they didn't expect us to, make good on that pre-purchase. And that was just an incredible gift to the organization to help it survive really the last 6 months with no earned income in the process. So we owe a tremendous debt of gratitude to those season ticket holders that agreed to support the organization like that. So thank you to those season ticket holders that did that. It was an incredible gift.
Yeah, and we were selling 2021 subscriptions as well. And basically what we have done with those is moved them to 21, 22, and they're kind of in a holding pattern until the fall of 21. A question for you both. Do you think we need to consider any extra special insurance or waivers in case someone attending the theaters contacts coronavirus? Has that been into yet?
We've been in contact with our insurance agent and carrier, and they're not aware of any such coverage at last time we discussed it. But I think that, that's why, constant contact with, the Kent County Health Department and also other medical professionals, just to try and, make sure that we're following the suggested guidelines. And that's as you go. We're not going to welcome people back into the theater as far as audience is concerned until towards the end of November with this production of Christmas Carol that we're currently planning. So we have we're doing a lot of preparation right now to prepare the facility, because in the middle of all that, we're also a third of the facility is under remodel right now. So, we're also trying to recover from the remodel at the same time. So it is an interesting time for insurance, because we have a lot of writers going on right now.
Yeah, I know that there, not to get too far into politics here, but I know that there is a lot of work being done trying to pass liability protection for businesses for this reason, because there isn't, coronavirus liability doesn't exist. But that said, I think, as an for all of your organizations, I think the operative word that you need to make sure that you're doing is taking reasonable effort to keep your patrons and your employees safe. As long as you are listening to your health departments and proceeding with caution, and and you're following the law and you're following the local regulations, as long as you're in compliance with those, you have a pretty solid, you're going from a place of strength. That said, I would say take everything that we say here with a grain of salt, and always consult with your own insurance providers.
Right. Well, one of the questions that got asked, as people could register, a question that got answered, and I'm going to take a couple of them and put them all down to one. But cleaning and disinfecting, getting your auditorium ready. People have talked about the ultraviolet, the fogging, the air exchange systems, all of that type of stuff. What are the two of you looking at? I know both theaters, and they're pretty large spaces. So what are you guys looking at? And then even like the daily type stuff, this is a lot to, I know because I'm doing it for us, it's a lot to undertake. So kind of like go through what you guys are thinking about the cleaning and disinfecting and all that type of stuff.
Yeah.
Because it's a big subject.
No, we looked at the fog solution, and actually relatively early on I'd heard about it, and I contacted one of our board members who is with one of the local hospitals, and she asked their facilities staff about it, and they just came back and said, look, we're not even doing that other than the surgical room. There's no way that they can afford it. And so that's the pretty, it does the whole room, pretty comprehensive program. Would love to do something like that. I think it would make the public feel fantastically safe if we were able to do that, but it's incredibly expensive. The current information we have is the portable foggers, the things that look like portable foggers really don't do anything. They just give you kind of the nice visual veneer look at actually doing something. But as we know in these times, it literally information does change in essentially a 10-day cycle. So I would say never about any of that stuff. We're trying to, with the 99.9% disinfectant, everything that's approved is what we're trying to use. And, events that we're planning where we would be welcoming an audience, we're not doing intermissions, we're not doing concessions, we're trying to minimize the amount of contact that the patron will necessarily have. And the movement that they'll necessarily have within the building itself, again, to minimize the load of all of that cleaning that's necessary, constant cleaning. But it will, I'm sure currently, what's being planned today will not be the same thing that actually happens in November. It'll probably change, and I think that the events of the last week or two, and then what's going to happen in the next week or two is going to make a big difference in terms of how we would face that, that post-Thanksgiving opening with an audience.
We did invest in quite a bit of additional equipment. So in addition to our theaters at the Center for the Arts, we also have a large art gallery and science museum. So we got quite a bit of square footage that we have to keep clean, and a lot of high touch areas if we're going to be reopening our museums and whatnot. So we did invest in a Clorox 360, which is one of the electrostatic units. And then we also bought 4 of the portable HEPA air scrubbers that we can use and have those around. And if we have other, we have now started to, we create, during the summer, during the fall, like late summer and fall, we started holding outdoor events. So with the 100 capacity maximum in the outdoor events, and that was great for the fall. But here in the just last week, the temperature kind of dipped to a point where we were starting to see a drop in attendance in the outdoor venues. And so we moved one of those events indoors into our 1,500 seat hall. And we had the audience on the stage within a small portable stage out in the audience, 20, 25 feet removed it was a cabaret evening. So we had singers, performing from behind a drum shield, and about 25 feet or so between the singers and the audience. And so we can have the air scrubbers can be there and in the room. And it's been interesting. Like we spent, I can't tell you how many hours we spent over the last week, because we developed all of our safety protocols for the outdoor venue. And in the outdoor venue, basically we said, you have to have your mask on unless you are sitting at your table. But if you are at your table with the party that you're with, the tables are socially distanced. So we said, if you are there and you're having food or drink at your table, that you can go ahead and take your mask off there. But if you want to get up and, go to the restroom or what have you, that you put your mask back on. And people have been very compliant with that. And they've felt really safe outdoors. And we've had great attendance. We've been at our kind of capacity maximum for the outdoor venues. But the second you bring it indoors, people's psychology changes. And so we're getting a lot more questions from our patrons, a lot of phone calls to the box office asking about what it is that we're doing, what it is that we're requiring. And also when we have singing happening indoors, it's a very, we've all been kind of keeping an eye on the research that's happening around the aerosol dispersion and accumulation with singers. Luckily, we have some folks on our board of directors and involved at the center who are involved in the health department and the Mid-Michigan Health. And so we were able to get their input as well on what they felt we should do for this event that we just had a few days ago. We had it on Thursday evening. And we decided to kind of stick with the same format where patrons are required to keep their masks on until they come in and sit down at their tables. And then if they want to have food and beverage, they can take them off for that. And we did not require, after a lot of back and forth, we really talked a lot, just for we had one meeting that was probably 2 hours long, talking about whether or not to have the singers perform with their masks on or to allow them to take their masks off. And a lot of the conversation centered around the nature of risk. And what about the nature of risk mitigation? And, we were talking about the universities, what they're doing, the school systems, and like that it's basically nobody having choir practices, indoors at this point. But of course we would say, okay, well, this isn't necessarily choirs, it's a single person singing indoors. What are the odds of somebody, what is the risk of exposure if there is somebody with one of these singers is infected? In terms of the distance between them and the audience, with them and the other singers. I'll think about all of those things. And we're like, okay, so we know that we're not going to be able to get our risk to zero, right? There's going to be some risk involved. At some point, we're going to have somebody who's, close to us, who's going to become infected. What are we taking reasonable effort to keep those folks safe, while also making sure that we're providing, the event in the best way that we can with all those safety things in place. And it's been I think that, the ultimate thing is that there are no right answers, right? Somebody's going to be mad at you no matter what you do. That's why you just got to kind of you make the best call that you can with the information that you have, and you don't be afraid to change as the information changes.
Another question that's come up, are you guys, once we start moving indoors and we're gonna start having audiences in our auditoriums, I know guidelines are being set up and different types of things. I know at least for Grand Rapids Civic, it's one of the things I'm working on is how to bring the patrons in, et cetera. But are you going to take temperatures for your audience members?
We are
Yeah.
not. You say you are, Bruce?
Yeah, audience and cast, yeah.
So we're doing a symptom assessment survey. So nobody's allowed to come in the building without taking the symptom assessment survey. So they have to self-declare themselves to be symptom-free. But we are not taking temperatures.
I will say I have bounced back and forth on that. And then Patrick Hardy, again, after listening to him for the third time on Monday night, he is insistent upon that. And Bruce and I have talked it over, and with the spikes that are happening, we just feel that it might be better to do so.
I think this is where you begin touching on risk mitigation or what happens if. You know, this is a what happens if. Is there insurance that'll protect you? Not necessarily, but if you do the simple assessment that Dexter's talking about, you do the temperature with your audience and with the people coming in the building, at least you're showing your concern and you've done at least the minimum. If you're not doing that, you know, because of the pandemic, I mean, if it weren't for a pandemic like this, would you wouldn't necessarily do the same thing, but obviously we're in the middle of it. And to sort of ignore that reality, even though people say, well, you know, what if people lie? Well, they do, but as Dexter mentioned, they have elected to do that. By not asking the question, you don't give them the choice to be honest with you. So that's why I think it's really critical that you do these things, because at least you're showing a recognition.
And it's going to take time, but you know, we're all sitting at 20%, so it's not like, you know, we have.
Well, and I don't even know, you know, we're hoping that we can meet that 20%. I know our symphony here did their first indoor performance this weekend, actually, and you know, they were actually over 100 seats in the venue that they're performing in, and they actually cut their number back to 50, and they had 30 at their event last night. So I think this comes down to, you know, how comfortable are our patrons going to be getting out, coming in. I think it's going to vary from community to community. It's going to vary from event to event, and you know, we may be in a situation that, you know, several weeks ago, we'd say, boy, I hope that's enough seats. And we may be in a situation where, you know, 50 or 60 seats is a win, just, you know, in the context of the comfort of the audience. And so I think we all, at least I feel like we need to really manage some of those expectations and truly understand that, you know, it's not a failure if, not necessarily a failure if.
You know, I know some of the, you know, we were talking about you know, we kind of did some surveys of some of our audience members and asked, you know, what safety precautions they felt were important. And it was helpful because it allowed us to kind of figure out safety measures that truly keep people safe versus safety measures that make people feel safe, right? And you can't really underestimate that too, right? Like I think that's one of the reasons, you know, probably the thing that made people feel the most comfortable over the last 3 months as we've started doing events is being outdoors. People feel a lot more comfortable being outdoors than being indoors. And so now as we're getting colder and we're forced to go indoors, it's a big, you know, it's a big question mark. And I think there's a lot of effort on our parts to make, you know, to make the case to our patrons that they are going to be safe. You know, and we can make the case right now, but until we have a track record of having these events indoors and not having infections happen, then people are probably going to stay away. You know, we participated in some of these, the Audience Outlook Monitor and the Advisory Board for the Arts has been doing these surveys of patrons around Michigan. and just asking them, when do you plan on coming back? When do you plan on attending a museum? When do you plan on attending a live concert? You know, and like, and the answers were like, you know, everything from, I'm not coming, I have no plans to come back. I'll come back when there's a vaccine that's universally available. I'll come back when the health department says it's okay. I'll come back when the caseload is low, you know, and then they were asking like, what are you planning on coming back to? And the thing that was absolutely at the bottom of the list was indoor concerts and theater. That is the thing that, you know, nobody wants to go into a giant room filled with 1,000 people and sit, you know, 4 inches away from someone that they don't, or from 8 people that they don't know. So there's, we have some work to do.
Right.
Not right now. Right now the data is not terribly encouraging.
Right. Have either of you, this is a question that just came in, have either of you had to send any of your cast or crew, volunteers or patrons home yet? I mean, we haven't yet, I don't think, Bruce, but Dexter, have you had to do anything?
Yes. So we had an event. We had an event a couple weeks ago. We had a cabaret night, and so we had a rehearsal the night before where the singers all came and rehearsed, and so then the night of the performance, the day after that, I got a call from one of the performers about an hour before the event happened, saying that this person had lost their sense of smell. And so they quarantined and they stayed away, and we activated our security, like our COVID action plan that we had kind of put in place, and did our contact tracing, and just kind of notified folks. And a couple of people went out and got tested. Those tests came back relatively quickly. Everything, you know, all of our safety measures that we had put in place they worked. So we did not have any infections that took place at that event. We had someone who came in who didn't know that they were exposed yet and had found out later, but there was no transmission that happened during our event, which was really encouraging to know that the safety protocols that we have in place did work. Right. Since then, we've had one other instance of like, just, you know, like not a direct exposure, but like a friend of a friend, like think somebody, you know, and so we were able to, you know, we've put enough extra space around our various rehearsals that we're able to move rehearsals either online, you know, to do Zoom rehearsals or whatnot for, you know, 2 or 3 rehearsals, and, you know, to be able to give folks a 10 to 14 day window in order to make sure that they're not showing symptoms. So we're trying to be as careful as we can, but, you know, you're right. Cases are spiking in the state. And so we have to be vigilant.
Are you guys getting or thinking about getting names and contact information on everyone to assist with the tracing? So like if we did have a patron or a cast member or crew member volunteer, is that something that we have the ability to do? That's
required, right? I think for theater venues, that's a requirement, is that you have to be able to do contract. So everything has to be ticketed in order to be able to meet the health department guidelines. Right.
Yep. How are you planning or are going to rehearse to keep singers separated?
So I've been talking a lot, Bruce.
Singers or actors?
Well, it says singers, but I would go both directions. I think it's, in my opinion, that's volunteers.
Right.
Because I don't separate from anybody.
Yeah, as far as the singers, I mean, when we have rehearsed with them, you know, we haven't kept a 25-foot distance. We've kept about a 12 to 15-foot distance between the singers and everyone else. Actors, we're doing a lot on Zoom, and then also we're fully masked and we maintain 6 to 8 feet, you know, inside. And again, it's part of that is the material that we're selecting, you know, lends itself to that. We're not trying to do interactive performance yet. You know, we're doing radio dramas and concerts as opposed to, you know, interactive stories.
We are, So we've had, with the cabarets, we've had to figure out how to be able to have singers on a stage with, mic'd, and trading off on the stage. Pardon my dog in the backstage. He's going to be barking at whoever is walking by our house. So apologize for that. But how do we keep, how do we swap out microphones? And so we've had, like, our comedy nights and stuff, coming up with a system to be able to swap out mics, to change out disposable, mic covers. So we have a fresh one for each one of the actors, and just coming up with new systems wholesale to be able to utilize our equipment without putting body mics on everyone or things like that. We've had to kind of be creative in terms of just looking at what are the numbers of people that we have in the booth? How do we sanitize the booth after various performances? How do we sanitize props? How do we limit how do we work with the backstage, people being masked backstage, number of people on the deck, all sorts of stuff like that. We're writing essentially a new employee handbook for, how our policies and procedures for backstage protocol in the time of COVID.
Right. I stole a question from an ACT webinar that I attended, and it was a good question, so I'm stealing it. With all of us being down since March, fiscal years are all over the board, but how are the two of you budgeting? And I think some of our smaller theaters might need to hear how to budget when there's no income. How do you budget? Are you budgeting for a whole year? I know from the ACT website, some theaters are budgeting for a whole year. Some of them are budgeting by quarter. Some of them are taking a dart and throwing it at the wall to see where it hits. How are you guys budgeting?
Largely quarter by quarter. I mean, we know certain annual commitments that we have, how we have to hit those, but we're currently budgeted through January, which is a little bit more than a quarter, but we're starting to work on, what the next quarter is going to look like, January to March. And then we'll do April to June. But it's kind of like the programming, because of all the changes. You really need to, I think, trying to cast too far ahead. I just think there's just so many variables. Nothing is like it was. You have nothing to compare it to, right? So you kind of are doing it in 90-day. We're trying to do it in 90-day windows.
I don't really think there's any good news. There's no secret, right? The nature of budgeting is you can't spend more than you take in. If you don't have any income going in, then you gotta spend as little as possible. You gotta batten down the hatches and weather out the storm. I think we've all started to really invest in virtual programming, trying to, in the hopes that we've been able to bring in some income on that. I think that's still in its infancy. So far, that's been the successful side of that has been more visibility and being able to engage with folks rather than any sort of real income. I think with the exception of certain outliers, with certain theaters who've had some success with it. But for the most part, the virtual market has been flooded with free content for the last 6 months. And so now, the most you can charge for something and expect people to come is maybe like $5 or $10. And unless you have, 1,000 or 2,000 or 3,000 people signing on to your virtual event, that gets kind of tough to do any sort of programming that's gonna pay the bills, pay the staff. I think we're kind of spending our time as much as we can connecting with our donors, making sure that our donors know how much we love them and how much we really need their support right now, because that's, that's how we're going to get through this. It's not by selling tickets right now. The smaller theaters that are hewing a lot more closely to that bottom line. They don't have a lot of extra money sitting in the bank to burn. It's a challenging year for those guys, and so I would say the best thing that we can do is, one of the reasons we have CTAM And one of the reasons that we are an arts community. So if there's anything that larger organizations like the center, or I think I can speak on behalf, don't want to speak on behalf of Grand Rapids, but like, if there's anything that we can do to help, to help the smaller companies stay afloat, just keep those doors open, so that when we get to the other side of this, that the community is intact. That all of you companies who are doing the more intimate work are able to still be there, keep doing the important work that you're doing.
How are you guys keeping sponsors engaged? There's no show, so how are you keeping those sponsors engaged? Because they're businesses too that are facing hardships. So how are we keeping our sponsorships engaged with maybe some of the smaller theaters, could learn from us?
Yeah, well, just it's like the donors. You keep communicating with them, and you try to, we're trying to package the limited events that we're able to do. We're trying to package those and see if we can get if something seems to align with a sponsor's needs or their interests. But certainly we don't have near the sponsors this year that we would in a typical year. And as you said, I mean, many of them are facing many of the same questions for their own businesses. So it's not something. I think the good news about all this is, unlike a lot of other crises, I mean, literally everyone is in it. And so there's a certain amount of things that can go unsaid. And you're not, you don't seem to be making nearly as many excuses as you might be in another type of crisis when you're asking for extra support. Not really, excuse isn't the right word, but you understand what I mean. It's not, they understand the issue. So there's a lot of understanding, and I think in some ways, genuine, actually deeper communication that can happen. Right now, there's some really great opportunities that we have with conversations we're having with donors and sponsors to really talk about the relationship and what is meaningful about it, and what can we do together, and how do we truly interact with one another and collaborate on what we both do, and how that all happens. So in some ways, if you want a silver lining it, there really is a great opportunity to really deepen the relationship that you have with sponsors and donors right now.
And if there is an upside to the virtual programming, it's that, right? That, the virtual programming is some way to provide that visibility for the sponsors. It's also a great way to connect with volunteers as well. We've been doing a weekly Shakespeare online live stream every single week, just to provide a space for our actors to get together. And that's also then provided a platform for us to be able to thank our sponsors who are continuing to support us during a year when we don't have a lot of visibility. But one of the things that's really, as we've been looking at the research and asking our patrons and looking at the data that's coming through in terms of what people do want to see in the virtual realm, in general, what we found is that they're not interested in passive consumption. They're looking for things that are interactive. So we're doing a lot more master classes, a lot more Q&As, or if it's a musical performance, making sure that we provide that back and forth so they feel like they're there in the room or in the space with that artist, and they can talk to the actors, because that kind of personal connection is something that has value. In a time when we're all feeling so isolated that we're sitting in our houses and not able to get out, being able to connect with people, especially people that maybe they wouldn't have they can't really stage door it. So giving people a chance, we're planning things like, as with our live streaming productions that are coming up, planning things like cast Q&As and cast, time to be able to sit with the patrons and just talk with them about the play, give them a little bit of backstage picture of that, because they seem to be craving that kind of connection. So just as you're looking at your virtual events, that seems to be a thing that might help make those events a little bit more successful.
Are you both trying to do shows that have smaller cast?
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Bruce is
I
asking me-
I have no interest in trying to corral 40 people right now.
I know it's, yeah, yes. The answer is yes. Then how comfortable, whoa, that one just disappeared me. How comfortable are you guys really with opening when Broadway still is closed?
Actually, I hadn't really given it much thought. I mean, I think it's such a local decision and factor. But again, I think the one concern that, we've had internally is, boy, I would really love it if, if Broadway led the way in terms of how to protect performers and crew from each other, in terms of, what do we do backstage? But, that's part of it. They're not ready to make that choice. And so I think we have to serve our local communities. But like anything else, I mean, I know that there are organizations that are just not, even though they're allowed to reopen, they're just not comfortable. There's a couple museums in Grand Rapids that just don't feel that what they do is conducive, in the format that seems to keep people safest. So they're not reopening at present. They just don't feel comfortable, creating that, potential, which I think you have to respect in this environment.
It's worth noting that I think one of the big reasons why Broadway isn't opening is the financial side of it, right? A Broadway show has to sell $1 million a week in tickets in order to be profitable. And a Broadway show is a for-profit business. It has investors. So right now there is no reason why investors would have any interest in investing in a Broadway show, which is one of the reasons why Broadway isn't opening. If they could open a Broadway show at 20% house, would they? Yeah, but that's not going to be financially feasible for them. So it kind of comes back to that financial, the financial thing, is it are the events that you're doing going to be profitable? And if they're not going to be profitable, what is it that they are bringing to your organization? Are they giving you the visibility that you need to make sure that you're maintaining your relationships with your volunteers? That might be a real and tangible goal, but it's different from a financial goal. So if that is something that is really important to your organization, you might consider doing some more events. For us, we're trying to find the smaller scale events that have minimal cost, that maybe just cost a couple $100 for us to put on, but maybe they bring in $500 or $1,000 in income, right? Just a little trickle of something that helps us, that is a profitable event, and just get something coming in the door that we can, it's worth it for us to do it. But right now, a large scale musical that's going to be attended by 50 people is not something that makes sense.
Right. And everybody has to feel comfortable with doing what they're doing, especially with social distancing. I mean, social distancing in our theater, takes us down. We're a larger theater. We held 750 seats. That means we're at 150 people or less. So it's bringing in just enough to keep some money coming in, but at the same time, keeping in contact with your patrons and your volunteers. Another question that came in is, anyone doing shows with casts that are from different households that closely interact on stage? This group was originally looking at doing a romantic comedies with cast sizes of 6 to 8, but we had planned on that several months ago with the assumptions that things would be better now. So are you guys, I guess different households interact on stage? I guess that goes back to the social distancing question. How are you doing? What type of shows are you doing with the social distancing?
Yeah, well, that's one reason we started with the radio plays, because we can maintain the distance in terms of how those can be staged. But we have begun to have that discussion, and I know we did with some of the work that the cabarets we were doing over the summer. We purposely chose situations with people cohabiting, living in the same apartment, to do duets, for instance, because that took care of that potential. So I'm sure as we get into actually doing, plays rather than the radio plays, that's definitely going to come into play. Yeah,
we haven't, for the most part, stepped into that. Our production of Almost Maine is two couples who live together, and we reordered some of the scenes so that we're not mixing and matching within those couples. There's only two places in the entire play where we have somebody on stage with someone who they are not living with. One of those, if you know the play, is in They Fell, where you have the two men, and luckily that's a static staging where they are socially distanced in that scene, and the other scene is the restaurant scene with the waitress, and so we're going to be able to have her masked and socially distanced from them during that scene. So at this point, we're trying to avoid that situation as much as we possibly can. We don't want people who are not living together to be sharing the space on stage together, especially if they're not masked.
Right. This is a great question, I think, and actually this comes from Randy Wyatt. Hi, Randy. What strategies are you utilizing to keep the morale going with staff, with volunteers, with patrons? I'm just going to put it out there. What are we doing to keep that morale going?
Well, with the staff, we're doing some staff development work that is always incredibly hard to do during the season when you're so concentrated on programming. We're taking that chance to really do some DEI work, which is really important. Then we're also beginning to focus on parts of the building itself that need a lot more upkeep than, again, we've been able to give it attention. We're starting to really look at inventory and how we're utilizing space. Again, it's find those activities that they never seem to have time to do in a regular season. If we can carve out some time in this time, that's actually a way to make them feel like we have progressed, even though we're not doing what we typically do.
Yeah, I think we're doing kind of similar things. We're also, interesting to say that COVID isn't the only thing that happened this year. And having the time and, to have the lull in programming to be able to take advantage of that, to be able to do some of the much needed work in the diversity, equity, and inclusion area has been something that's been really important to us. It's been really a value to the staff and to the team. But we're also trying to make sure that there's also just everybody feels disconnected from the team. We're all working from home. We don't see each other as much. And so we've struggled a little bit. We've added some meetings and taken away some meetings here and there. And there's a lot more just caregiving happening within our staff, where we have a meeting, we have a half-hour lunch meeting every week or so, where parents of staff members who have kids that are in virtual school, or just parents who are at home right now with kids at home, where we just can get on together and eat lunch and just vent and just be not talking to each other about marketing or a particular event that's coming up, but just saying, how are you holding up? What are you struggling with? Boy, isn't it terrible to try to wrangle a 2-year-old while you're in the middle of a programming meeting. And so that kind of caregiving and reaching out to each other has really helped, I think, to let everybody know that they're not in it alone, that we're all, we all try to put our best face forward when we're on a Zoom call. But, meanwhile, even while I'm sitting here, there's things happening in my house, my dog's barking in the background, somebody's, it's important that it's kind of like social media, right? Where nothing's as perfect as the image that we put forth on social media. And it's important to acknowledge that, it's a time where we're all struggling, and we're all struggling in many of the same ways. And so we should be able to share that.
This is something lighthearted here. We had a question that came in earlier today through the Zoom meeting. I'm creating a board game called Butts and Seats, and this will be my second game. I have all sorts of questions about reaching out to many CTI members for input. But today, he's asking the two of you, or they are asking the two of you, if community theater was a board game, what would be the goal and how would you win? I love this question.
It's a great question.
Because it's like, okay, so community theater is a board game. What's your goal? How do you win? I love this question.
I would say that the goal is to, be the best, but to be the most comprehensive experiential storyteller in your community, meaning the goal is to be able to tell all the stories that represent your entire community, utilizing all of the community to tell those stories. That would be, I don't know how you, how you make that a winning, how you would do that, but it would be to collect all of that capital from all the various communities in your community and be the most comprehensive storyteller of your community.
I have two answers, and maybe the two answers are in opposition to each other. But so my first answer is that I think the game of community theater is a collaborative game, not a game that you win, right? Because if somebody is a winner, then that implies that somebody else is a loser, right? And that means it's a competition against somebody else. So I'd say it needs to be one of those collaborative games that I love to play with my kids, rather than a competitive game. And I think if it were a collaborative game, the game, the way that the group would win that game would be that every so often, right? So whenever you put up a show, I think Bruce would probably agree with me, like, between the two of us, we probably got several hundred shows, probably more than several hundred shows under our belts between us. But you put together all the same ingredients for a show, you do it every couple of months. And for the most part, you got kind of the bell curve, right? So for the most part, you put in good ingredients and you come out with a pretty decent show, right? And you put out, and you have you have a good show. You put in good people, you put together a good team, you end up with a really good show. But every so often, the magic happens. And I have yet to figure out how, right? Because I can put the same ingredients together 15 different times, and 14 times I will come out with a good show. But then on that 15th time, I will end up with magic. Right? It's that magical, invisible thing where just everything happens right, and you have a life-changing experience in the rehearsal studio, and your cast is family, and the audience feels that, and they're right along there with you, and they're buzzing when they're walking out of the theater. And I think that ultimately is the prize, right? That's what we're all striving for all the time. That's if you're a part of a production like that, you never leave the theater after that, right? You come right back, and you spend the next few years in search of that elusive high again that you had with that particular production. So I think that would be so. But there's an element. I feel like there's an element of chance to that, right? Because no matter how I try, I haven't, a couple 200-300 shows. I still haven't quite figured out how to nail that every single time. So there has to be an element of chance to it. But
and that just cracks me up, because as soon as I saw that question, I'm like, oh, I'm the black geek, because I wear black as a techie. And I'm calling it, I went into the little game board of how I'm going to go for, never mind. I just went totally different, because I'm like, I want the black piece because I got my blacks on. I can't be seen. I can't do this. Anyway, I'm going to ask Jamie and JR to hop back in, because we're getting down to our time. And I want to thank both Bruce and Dexter for doing this. This has been fabulous, I think, for me to be able to I spent a lot of time with Bruce. Dexter, I haven't, been able to talk to you a lot. So I want to thank both of you for participating in this roundtable. And I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Jamie Peterson.
Well, I would like to thank the Community Theater Association of Michigan. This has been a fantastic series, really a great event. So thank you for letting me be a part of it.
Yeah, this has been great. I have heard rumors about the success of the conference this year, and I think it speaks to the strength and the need of the wonderful work that CTAM does. So thank you guys for putting together such a meaningful conference this year, and really kind of meeting the needs of all your membership.
And thank you so much for being a part of that. I can't believe what an incredible week it's been. I say that for you attendees, but what an incredible 2.5, 3 months it's been for us putting these pieces together. From your comments and the things that you've shared, I feel as if you've enjoyed and appreciated what you've received through the workshops and the roundtables. We've done a lot this week. We have learned how to navigate a disaster. We have opened the conversation to being more aware of intimacy on and off the stage. We have learned our part and our impact in our community. We've got great examples on how we're going to build props, for theater as soon as we get right back to it. Developing our own technical leaders for the future, honing our craft as an actor, and then most importantly, diversity. Making sure that we are an inclusive and welcoming entity and we reflect our community, to understanding what the new roles of being a stage manager is going to be through the pandemic and moving forward, to just understanding where we're going to go. We have covered so much ground this week, and I am so proud of everyone, our panelists, our attendees. It has been amazing. I want to tell you, none of this would have happened this week without J.R. Bornman. He has worked tirelessly to put all of these presenters together, to rehearse, to schedule meeting after meeting. Chuck Gutierrez has been our technical angel through all of this. We call him Prince Chuck for a reason. He is a king among men, and he is so generous with his time and talents. So it is truly, from the bottom of my heart, appreciation out to you all, not to mention our wonderful Mary Jo DeNolf.
And let's not forget, kudos to Jamie Peterson here. This man has done those fine videos on Facebook. He has taken the time to put those together, and they're just wonderful. And he's been rocking the intros and the outros and getting the feedback this whole week. I could not have done this without Jamie, without Mary Jo, without Chuck. It's just been incredible. And I wanted to get on at the end of this because I noticed at the participation list that most of the folks on this list have been with us all week. They have not missed an event, and sticking through the feedback and sticking with us through every technical glitch. And I am so overjoyed that the amount of people that have come to see this. Like I can remember months ago when we were like, let's try and do this virtually. Let's see what can happen. Let's figure this out. And the response has just been incredible. It's been a week. It's been absolutely incredible. And I will be happy to do it again in a year. I'm not tomorrow, but in a year. This has just been incredible. This has been this is my first year. This is my anniversary is 1 year today. And it's been a year, and I couldn't be happier with the board that we have. Things going forward are just going to be absolutely incredible. So thank you to the attendees that have been with us all week. Again, thank you, Bruce. Thank you, Dexter. You guys are the top of the list for theaters in Michigan, and your knowledge of theater is just invaluable. And we're so happy, so lucky to have you guys with us through all of this. Thank you, Jamie. Thank you, Mary Jo. Thank you, Chuck, if he's still with us. Just been absolutely incredible. It's just been a whirlwind week. I'm without words. Thank you.
Now, a lot of you have asked, will we be able to see these videos? Will we be able to go back, and maybe you missed a session during this week and you want to take a look? Well, I'm really happy to share with you that just within the time span of this roundtable, we have in fact put our new YouTube channel live. So you can go out on YouTube and you can search for Community Theater Association of Michigan, CTAM, and you're going to find all of the videos from this week. In addition, we've got some examples of our script writing submissions, which is, if you're not aware, we have a script writing competition every single year. You can find out more about that on our website, ctam.online. So I want you to not just go out and visit our YouTube channel. I need you to become a subscriber to our YouTube channel, because this is just the first of many videos and sessions that we hope to post in the future. And one last thing before I let you go, if you haven't yet become a member of CTAM, please consider doing so. Visit our website, ctam.online. Talk to your theaters about becoming an affiliate member so you don't miss out on any of these opportunities or the information that we share. You too can become an individual member and help to promote and help to support your state community theater organization. Thanks, guys. I appreciate it. We're going to get out of here and get everyone back to their Saturday night. You have a wonderful evening, and thank you so much for all of your support this week.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye, guys.